Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
We're back with Season 2, Episode 2 of the WeCOACH Podcast on Wisp Sports. Every 2 weeks, we go one-on-one with some of the greatest women coaches, administrators, and industry leaders in the world of sports for insightful and inspiring conversations. I'm your host, Megan Kahn, CEO of WeCOACH. This podcast is a co-production of WeCOACH and Wisp Sports. WeCOACH is a premier nonprofit organization committed to keeping and advancing women in the coaching profession. Through our in-person and online programming and resources, we are empowering current female coaches and hoping to inspire the next generation of young girls who dream of following in their footsteps. Today's guest, Carol Bruggeman, has served as Executive Director of the National Fastpitch Coaches Association since 2015. Her leadership has guided the organization through some impressive growth. Prior to her role with the NFCA, she was a longtime Division I coach at Michigan, Purdue, and Louisville, and is a sought-after national speaker and educator. Carol, hi, Carol. Welcome to the WeCOACH Podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here, Megan. Thanks for inviting me in.
And I know it's been a whirlwind for you guys. You came off convention. We're going to talk about it here as we get into this. Now you're smack in the middle of all your coaching clinics, your education season. Your real softball season hasn't even yet tipped off. Have you caught your breath at all over the holidays and in all your educational sessions?
I probably feel a little bit like you. I don't think we ever catch our breath, do we? But it's been amazing. It's a really exciting time to be a part of the sport of softball. Having spent my entire career in the sport and around the sport, it's just never been in a healthier, more vibrant place, and it's just really fun to be a part of it all.
Well, and we're going to talk about the massive growth and everything that we're seeing in the landscape of softball. But first I have to go back to, we just figured out we're kindred spirits as Iowans. So, come on, who's not a diehard Hawkeye fan?
We absolutely are kindred spirits. And as they say in Iowa, there's no strangers in Iowa, just neighbors or friends you haven't met yet. And I feel like we've known each other a while, and now we have this additional connection. But, where I know we're both proud to be from the Hawkeye State, and, just a lot of great values and roots instilled in both of us. And it's just, it's a lot of fun. It's always fun when you find that connection, someone from Iowa. It gives you that, kind of warm, fuzzy feeling. And, it's always fun to go back there, and also fun to just get out in the world and tackle it all.
Just small town girl doing big things.
Well, there's not too many people from Iowa who aren't from a small town. There's obviously a lot of big cities in Iowa as well. And went to school in Iowa City at the University of Iowa, but, grew up in a very small town called Charter Oak Ute High School, and very close to the Nebraska border. And just really appreciate, they always say in your life you have roots and wings, and I'm very appreciative of the roots and the values instilled in those good Iowa traditions and values. And certainly it's allowed me to spread my wings a little bit, and but still have those good core values.
That's right. So let's talk about this, because you would have grown up basically a product of Title IX and coming from a small town. We know the state of Iowa is advanced in their support of women, and one of the first states to offer 6-on-6 girls basketball. So what was that like growing up, and how did you get your start in sports?
Yeah, you're really a product of your environment. You only know what you know. And when I grew up in Iowa, female athletes, even in the early 80s when I went to high school, were treated very much equally as the male high school athletes. And so I really never knew any different. I thought the whole world was like that, because just a small example, in high school, of course the boys baseball players wore metal cleats, and so did we in high school. We wore metal cleats in high school in the early 80s in Iowa, and because everything was equal. And my dad was an educator. He was a high school principal. He was my first coach years and years ago. And so education was, very big in our family, of course. And but I remember getting to college when I went to school at the University of Iowa. I remember getting to college, and all of the other freshmen who weren't from the state of Iowa, were like tripping over their metal cleats, and they were talking about how they were just going to get injured. And, it was like this big deal. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know there was another type to wear, so it just shows you the quality and really the commitment. I also had the pleasure of, when I went to school at the University of Iowa, the athletic director there was Christine Grant, Dr. Grant, who was, a leader in Title IX. Didn't know it at the time. I appreciate it even more now. And she, as I went on to grad school there at the University of Iowa, she was my academic advisor, professor. And so, I mean, how lucky was I to learn from Miss Title IX, herself. And so, I just had some really good influences early in my career about, how to treat people and equality. And when I got outside that kind of bubble, I realized that, and it still is a struggle in Iowa too, of course. It wasn't completely equal, but those are just some examples of how it was, just the value of equality there. But then I realized, wow, there's a lot of work to do. When I first got to college was right when that switchover was happening between the AIAW and NCAA that I was really unaware of until I got to grad school and then started coaching and really realized, wow, this was a big historical shift in athletics in general in the collegiate ranks. So yes, I just always very appreciative of those opportunities I had as a young kid. But I was a multi-sport athlete, like a lot of people out there. Played basketball, ran track, played softball. It really did just about anything. Was a swimmer, was a lifeguard, just, picked up a golf club every now and then. I mean, just anything that I could get my hands on. Probably my favorite sport still to this day is water skiing, as we were talking about. We both have that, outdoor lake connection. So I was on one ski probably by the time I was 10 years old and have never looked back. So, yes, it's been a lot of fun. And now I think about all the opportunities that women have as student athletes, to participate at whatever level they want, to do whatever they want, actually have some financial support to do so. And most importantly, that women can choose the career of coaching and excel and stay in it for a long time because of all the opportunities afforded now.
Absolutely. And you're a fantastic role model for so many young girls out there and even current coaches. Not that we want them to leave the profession, but you were one who made this awesome transition and still get to be around the game that you love. So I want to go back though and have you put on your coaching hat and maybe walk us through what that was like as you were leaving your playing career at Iowa and you were evaluating your options. Was there any other option besides coaching, or were you destined to be a coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't really think too much about coaching when I was getting my undergraduate degree. My degrees in business administration and accounting. I've always liked that type of world and really thought that was going to be my direction. Climbing that corporate ladder and being a businesswoman. And when I really started to get serious about getting a job in that field after graduation, it just my heart wasn't in it. My head was in it, but my heart wasn't in it. And Marlo Thomas wrote this book. It's like, well, she was the author of the book and compiled the stories, but the book is called The Right Words at the Right Time. And I talked about it this year a little bit at our convention, our annual big event. It was in Atlantic City, New Jersey this year. But she compiled all these stories of famous people of all walks of life and said, what were the right words at the right time that somebody said to you? And I go back to that time in my life because I just finished my undergraduate degree, thought I was going to go into business and couldn't quite take that jump to start the first job and do that sort of thing. And I remember my parents saying to me, well, why don't you go back to graduate school? You can't ever go wrong getting more education, especially as a female. A lot of power in education, especially at that time for a female. And so I did. I went back to graduate school and was a graduate assistant coach for Gail Blevins, who was a legendary coach at the University of Iowa. And from that point on, when I started getting into classes in athletic administration and coaching and leadership and that sort of thing, I knew I had really found my passion and started coaching on the field. And lucky me, after that was hired by Carol Hutchins, who at the time no one knew she'd only end up being the winningest coach in the history of the game. So again, how fortunate was I to be hired by her and worked together with her for 5 years and really started to set the foundation for coaching. I knew at that point in time, that's where I wanted to spend the majority of my career. And then was the head coach at Purdue, started the program there, was there for 12 years, had a wonderful time as a Boilermaker, and just coached some wonderful student athletes and a lot of fun and a lot of challenges building a program from the ground up. And now with the resources at institutions, John Rittman, who's a head coach at Clemson, is a good example. When Clemson started the program, they hired him in 2017, and they're not starting their first pitch until this season in 2020. So a lot of time to build a facility and recruit, and which is awesome. Back then, when programs were being added at very fast pace, I was hired in November, December, but did not leave Michigan, coached with Carol Hutchins at Michigan through the spring, started June 1, and we were competing that next year with about 2 scholarship players and about 20 people from a tryout. So it was just very, very different, but I really appreciate the opportunity there. Had the chance to be hired by and work for Joni Comstock, who is another huge leader in our industry, the senior director, vice president of championships at the NCAA now, but she was my senior women's administrator and my direct report at Purdue. So very lucky to work for her. And then decided it was kind of time for a change, and came to the University of Louisville and worked at the University of Louisville for 9 years and had some unbelievable teams, just, top 10 teams, top 25 teams. It was just really a fun time to be at Louisville. All the sports were really excelling at that point. And, then decided to shift into this role. But, I'll always be a coach. I get asked that a lot of times. Don't you miss it? And well, of course, how can you do something for 25 years and not miss it? But I will always be a coach and think like a coach. And I think that's really helped me in the current role that I'm in representing coaches and really working for coaches in the softball space.
Yeah, so I'm curious, right? Talking about 25 years in the profession, and you're still around the game you love, and it's certainly a different passion, but you're still connected. I mean, I certainly feel that in my role. What would you have told your younger self that you know now that would have served you well as a coach then?
As a coach, well, I feel like what would have served me well. I think as coaches, and this, we get very locked into our team, our bubble, working with those 18 to 24 student athletes, working on one goal, which is, growing up people for a living, as Carol Hutchins says, that's our first role, but also trying to win games and teach them about how to be productive citizens and all of those wonderful things. But you get really locked into this kind of one lane of your life. And even when I was coaching, I served on the board for the NFCA. I did different speaking roles. I've done a lot of different things, but you're still locked into that tunnel, laser focused, and kind of have to be. And I think going back now, kind of knowing what I know now with this expanded role, and, my world's just gotten a lot bigger in the sport of softball, that it's really okay to miss one day of practice in October when your season doesn't start till February. It's really okay if a young lady doesn't make an individual because she's got a extra nursing lab or whatever it might be. You get so locked into, we have to take every minute we have and just use it to its fullest. Or I need to turn down this opportunity to do X, Y, and Z nationally because I'm going to miss a half of a practice. Just having that bigger, broader perspective is something I would remind, kind of myself looking back now as a coach. And, but I think that, you kind of have to have that a little bit as a coach too, because it is, the coaching world, as has changed a lot. It's more of a CEO of your individual sport versus, just on the field coaching.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times, right, we're going to talk about this here. I'm going to lead you this way. As an assistant coach, you're not sitting in the chair to make those decisions and ultimately be responsible for potentially 30, 40, 50 people under your watch. When you look at even all the support staff and stuff that report to you. When you went from Purdue, right, you called the shots for 12 years, and then you go back to not being the one calling the shots at Louisville. What made you a better assistant coach when you stepped out of that role as a head coach?
Well, I think, as with any assistant coach or really any coach, I always felt like it's better to get it right than to be right. And, a lot of times, you always want to make decisions that are best for the whole program and the whole big picture, not just about my way is the only way. So always try to hold on to that. It's better to get it right than be right. And, as a staff, you're not always going to agree whether you're the head coach, associate head coach, assistant coach, graduate assistant, whatever it might be. You're going to have these great dialogues behind closed doors, but when you hit the field or you're in front of the team, you have to be a united front. And that was very easy for me to do. As an associate head coach, as an assistant coach, even with Carol Hutchins, and certainly as a head coach, just we're a united front when we're in front of the team. Because they feel it, they know it, they live it. They can tell when there's any sort of friction or any animosity or anything like that, and that's the last thing you want for a team to have. So just making sure that your own ego's in check, and I think what's helped too is, for a lot of assistant coaches, I get asked this a lot, like, I think I'm ready to make the jump to be a head coach, or how will I know when I'm ready to be a head coach? And, as you and I both know, there's not a straight line answer to that. It's not an easy thing to answer, but I always kind of turn it back to them and say, as an assistant, it's easy to make suggestions, but as a head coach, it's not always, it's a little more challenging to make decisions. There's a big difference between suggestions and decisions. And when you feel like you're ready to make some decisions and you can back them up with the rationale why, then have at it. But a lot of times in that assistant role, it's suggest. But when you've got to live with that decision, having been in that seat and make those decisions, or calling those timeouts, or making those scholarship decisions, or whatever it might be, and when you've done that before, it's a little easier to respect the person who is making those decisions and understanding their rationale why.
And the speed at which we have to make those decisions, right? So many things, the landscape that we're living in is so fast now. It's a much faster pace than it was even 5, 10, 15 years ago. And so the speed at which things are crossing our desk and we're having to make decisions on, I think, is one thing that as a leader, you don't realize until you're sitting in that seat.
Oh, there's no question. We live in that kind of world right now. Information at our fingertips, and so people expect those decisions to be at their fingertips, so to speak. And so you're absolutely right. Just trying to, some things just take a little time. You have to, as we say around the NFCA office, you got to use your noodle, use your brain. You got to noodle on things. We kind of jokingly say, man, let's noodle on that for a day, because sometimes you really do have to step back. And, a lot of people don't like that. They want something now, and it has to happen now. And there are times where you don't have time to do that. But you're absolutely right. The pace and the amount of responsibility on coaches is very, very different. But with that also has come in our sport, more coaching opportunities, higher salaries, more ability to just like softball facilities all over the country, the amount of exposure for the sport of softball. So yes, there's a lot more decisions that have to be made and a lot more items to manage. And at the same time, we have a lot more, blessings at our fingertips, so to speak, as our sport is on the upward trend. And there's a lot of sports that are stagnant or on the downward trend. And really, ultimately, that's our role here at the NFCA. We are the caretakers of the sport, and to make sure we continue on that upward trend and take care of our coaches.
Let's talk about that upward trend, right? You're knocking on the 4th anniversary as executive director. Is that correct?
Yes. I was the interim director initially, and then became the full-time executive director 6 months later. So knocking on the door 4 years. You're absolutely right.
Right. And we've seen softball just explode, coincidentally or not. I don't know, Carol, you might have a lot of power in your hands, but the game has more parity than ever. We've seen, Patty Gasso's contract and now Hutch's contract, and some of these huge payouts that we're seeing in salaries, which is awesome for our female coaches. We've obviously been tracking the changes in Oklahoma City and what's happening around the excitement with the World Series and ESPN ratings and all of that I've seen. Talk about what that means to you personally and to the association itself.
Yeah, I feel like, God, it's just exciting. I don't know, you just feel this palpable energy around our sport right now. Whether you're talking to somebody, I'm flying on an airplane and we get into a conversation and it lends to fast pitch softball. Pretty much it can be talking to almost any walk of life, and they have an idea of our sport, or they've watched it, or they've seen it, or they've been around it. But it has absolutely grown. And I think part of it is the the people you've mentioned, the Patty Gassos, the Carol Hutchins, those type of people keep pushing the bar. And with anything in life, you've got to take the top and keep pushing it up, because then everything else will follow. It's just like coaching a team. You want all your players to reach the standard of the best player, and then keep pushing that best player all the time, so that everything keeps rising up. And that's what's happened a lot. A lot of our Power 5 schools have received the television exposure, the bigger budgets, the better facilities, and that has allowed a huge trickle down effect to all Division I programs, Division II, Division III. I mean, we have 415 Division III schools that play softball, and it's awesome. Junior college level, all the way down to the high school and then club ball level, and we serve all those coaches. But it's just a lot. If you go back even 15 years ago, a lot of high school athletes were gravitating toward maybe one or two sports, and now they're gravitating toward, a lot of them, toward softball, volleyball, soccer. I mean, it's a variety of sports, and softball's in that mix. So, and I think a lot of that has to do with the increased athleticism in our sport, the increased excitement. Our game's a very fast-paced game, and certainly the exposure we've received. And having been now on, I guess, a little side job I have is I have the pleasure of being a television analyst for ESPN and SEC Network, now the ACC Network, Big Ten Network, and now being on that side of things, where you're trying to tell the story and talk about the strategies of the game and bring these players' stories to life. It's the amount of exposure we've received on TV, and Meg Aronowitz, who's the coordinating producer, one of the coordinating producers at ESPN, has a lot to do with that. Good colleague and friend of mine. Her goal has always been to make softball the number one watch sport, women's sport on TV, and we are very, very close to making that happen. And again, a lot of it is the quality of our game, the pace of our game, the people surrounding our game, and just our growth at the grassroots level of people interested. And I think, without going into too much depth, I think our sport, it really helps when people of all walks of life understand the sport, and then it can really grow. So if, for instance, if a mom or dad has never really played softball, I bet at some point in time they've been to a baseball game, or they've been around the sport a little bit, so they can go out in the backyard and start playing with their daughter if they're really excited about, if she's really excited about softball, or her friends are. And so I think that has helped too, is we've really helped educate a huge population of people about our sport. But anyway, it's been a lot of fun. The TV ratings keep growing. As you mentioned, our championships keep growing. And our role at the NFCA, as I mentioned, is to make sure we are always staying on top of trends. For instance, a couple years ago, our sport was one of the worst in terms of recruiting young athletes, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, getting college commitments. It was out of control for everyone. The college coaches didn't like it. Players didn't like it. Student athletes didn't like it. Nobody liked it. Administrators, but no one could stop, because it was this big, recruiting war, so to speak. And so we took that bull by the horns, and we were the bridge between our coaches and the NCAA. We all worked together. It was a lot of work, but we worked together, and now we have legislation that there's no contact till September 1 of their junior year. And we're in the first year, almost year and a half of that legislation. So I think it'll pay dividends for us about 2 or 3 years down the road. But it's just, we're trying to stay on top of things that keep taking care of our sport, so we can continue this growth.
Well, speaking of trends, I mean, I think your association is as good as they come in being relevant and timely. I remember that legislation and your stand on that and taking the bull by the horns very vividly. And I think we saw a lot of other sport associations looking over their shoulder at what you were doing and what you're able to accomplish.
Well, thank you. We have a fantastic staff. I'm very proud of our NFCA team that works every day and pulls off all of the things we do. And, we have a board of directors. As a nonprofit organization, we have a board of directors that's elected by their peers to serve in various roles. So we have 20 members on our board of directors, which is our leadership as well. And we've all worked together, and we just want to have an association that mirrors the excitement of our sport. And we've worked really hard in the last 4 years to do that. We feel like we really have 4 main pillars with our organization, and that's education and events and awards. And then, as we've been talking about, kind of the change agents or the caretakers of our sport. And then within those pillars, we have tons of things. And the only way our sport's going to grow is if our coaches continue to grow. And so education is really our number 1 pillar. And so whatever you're looking for in terms of fast pitch softball, if you want to coach, we try to provide that for our coaches, from pitching and hitting endorsements to drills databases to podcasts to webinars. I mean, I could go on and on. We have a lot of offerings. And within those offerings are these events that you mentioned, our convention. We have 8 coaches clinics across the country. We have 2 left this weekend. We'll have close to 3,000 grassroots coaches that attend those 8 clinics. So it's a lot of fun. We have lead-off tournaments, college tournaments. We've got the Division III tournament coming up in Tucson. We've got an NAI tournament coming up in Columbus, Georgia. And then we're bringing back our Division I lead-off, which will have the U.S. national team. That's the first weekend of the season in early February. So, we have a lot of events to celebrate and continue to grow the game. And our third pillar is really our awards, our Victory Club recognition for coaches, our All-American awards for the student athletes. We have a lot of scholarships and grants and that sort of thing. And then, as we've talked a lot about, just the caretakers, change agents for the sport, networking opportunities to make sure we band together and continue to forge our sport forward. So it's been a lot of fun, but it is a group effort. Our NFCA staff's awesome, and our coaches are really just a fun group to work with. I don't know what it is about softball, Megan, but I hear this all the time, that our softball coaches really share, and we really do. It doesn't take a lot for me to ask coaches to come speak at our coaches clinics, because they want to give back, or they want to share what they know and have the grassroots level, the high school travel ball youth community continue to grow. And not all sports are like that. Sometimes you can get very protective of that information, or kind of into your own group or your own niche. And softball, if you come to one of our events, which I know you've been to, but you'll see a first-year high school head coach hanging out with a 20-year Division I head coach and a 3-year assistant coach at Division III, and they're all sitting at a table sharing ideas. So that's a lot of fun to be a part of.
I'd 100% back that up. I think softball, don't tell anyone this, softball is my favorite sport to watch, but we're keeping it between you and me and our thousands of listeners right now, so don't tell anyone.
I love it. I love it.
But it's true. Your coaches are really special people. I think, I came from the basketball world, and then in my role and what I've been doing the last several years, had an opportunity to expand my network, and some softball coaches are some really special people.
Well, I can't agree with you more, and I'm glad the rest of the world is catching on.
I want to go back to, you talked about your ability to engage and that everyone's all in for the game itself. I think we've seen that a little bit with your Power of One campaign. I'm going to ask you about Rhonda Revelle, right? So when we saw what happened there, I don't know if that was spearheaded from your office or the coaches themselves, but we saw this rally around what was happening for Rhonda on social media. How involved is the association and your coaches in making those decisions to support what's going on?
That's a great question, Megan. Our association supports all coaches, and we have such a diverse group of coaches in softball. We have all ages from 20 to 80, and we certainly have male and female coaches. But in Rhonda's situation, as with any situation, unfortunately, we're in a culture where there are a lot of investigations. There are a lot of really fear and concerns from coaches in terms of, how they manage their team and coach their student athletes. And so, we are constantly trying to educate and help our coaches, really help administrators, give them best practices on how to handle things like that, because it's a new world for them as well. And when it comes to somebody like Rhonda Revelle, the amount of support she received was 100% because of Rhonda Revelle and who she is. She has served the NFCA as president and in the board for over half her coaching career. She has a lot of great colleagues in the game because of her level of professionalism and connection in the sport. Unfortunately, when a coach goes through that sort of thing, we have, and when I say we, it's our legal counsel and our board of directors has made a pretty hard stand that the association, we can't make a public statement because we don't have all the information from any division and any walk of life. However, because Rhonda was who she was, a lot of people had the chance to voice their support, and there was no one more excited to voice their support than me once she was reinstated, and I kind of got the green light that it's okay to say what you want to say, because Rhonda and I have been colleagues and friends for 30 years, and there's very few people I look up to more than Rhonda Revelle. So, and just having visited with her off and on throughout her summer, and she's just proof that you stay true to who you are, and you're willing to stand up for what's right. Good things can happen. But I give the support behind Rhonda 100% credit to her. And I think what I have found, Megan, in this role is so interesting is there are literally dozens and dozens, and I could say hundreds of coaches who have gone through something very similar that Rhonda Revelle did, but it just doesn't get public. Either it's handled appropriately and gets handled at the institutional level and it is solved, or it just doesn't get into the public eye. So Rhonda's was kind of a perfect storm of being in the public, which wasn't always bad because of the education and awareness that went with that. But we support our coaches. We try to educate and help. And again, I give that particular situation. It was a big win for coaches everywhere of all sports that someone of her stature was able to come out on the kind of the bright side of that whole situation.
Well, and I think history has shown too often that our coaches don't come out on the right side of that situation. So it's difficult, right?
Yes.
You as the leader of your organization and what we're doing at WeCOACH, we're supporting our coaches every way we can. But in these situations, we're sort of between a rock and a hard place and our ability to be able to advocate. And you mentioned for every Rhonda, there's 300 others that we haven't even heard about. And so it's this really tough stance, I think, just even within what we can do in terms of advocacy. And we're not an advocacy organization, like specifically WeCOACH is an educational organization. And so I know that sometimes personally we feel pulled to want to do things, but from an association standpoint, like we maybe can't back it up.
Absolutely. It's, as you mentioned, it's very difficult, especially when you feel you have a personal connection to someone. And obviously we don't have a personal connection to everyone, but we have a personal kind of calling to support coaches in general. And you're absolutely right. I think it's the number one, if I had to pick one thing that coaches are, concerned about is when's that ball going to drop in my program, whatever that may be. And so just, you're trying to coach to your authentic self. And if you feel your team needs discipline, be able to offer a strong redirect or discipline. If you feel your team needs a pat on the back, being able to give them that, and just being able to coach to your authentic self. And a lot of coaches right now feel like they have to coach to keep their job or coach to make people happy. And, that's just not being your authentic self. So we're trying to bridge that gap, working with a lot of groups. I'm looking forward to this year, working with our legal counsel and trying to connect all of our sport associations, coaches of women's sports. This is where this happens the most often. Male and female coaches of male sports just aren't in the boat as much. It's more coaches of women athletes and specifically women coaches, but trying to, get to NACTA and just have some open dialogue and conversations about best practices, get to women leaders, just all sorts of things to connect, be a bridge. Hey, we know these things come up. Let's come up with some best practices for everyone involved. Because if you've been a coach on the other end of that, whether it's true or not, and let's say it's not true, or it comes out that it's not, and the coach is reinstated, I have watched way too many coaches go through that, and immediately they're just isolated. You can't go into the office, you can't talk to your players, you can't talk to your coaches, you can't talk to anybody. And that's a really tough situation for anyone, let alone a coach. Coaches are social beings. They're used to being around people. So anything we can do to get out in front of it on the front end on individual campuses, make sure we have some best practices, make sure our student athlete questionnaires are appropriate, giving great information, and just taking the emotion out of a lot of things for our players and our coaches, and then making sure that moving forward, there's some good practices in place for all involved.
Well, thanks for that. And please always know that WeCOACH is happy and willing to step in and help be a conduit for any of those conversations and be able to help be a change agent in what's happening, because it is affecting every sport across the board right now.
Absolutely. Well, you'll be all in, Megan.
Thanks for that. We're going to be right back after this.
Serious coaches need a serious education. The University of Denver offers a highly interactive and applied online education for sport and strength conditioning coaches of all backgrounds. Students benefit from a comprehensive yet flexible curriculum to help you achieve your personal and professional goals. Come and learn from professors who are renowned leaders in coach education and dedicated to your success. Submit an application year-round and begin during any 10-week quarter with the University of Denver. Invest in yourself now and turn your passion into a successful career as a coach. To learn more, head over to wecoachsports.org/DU.
And we're back with my guest, NFCA Executive Director, Carol Bruggeman. Carol, I want to go to, because we didn't really talk about this, we skipped over from your coaching days and then what you're doing at the association. Walk me through that thought process when you're evaluating leaving the coaching profession and then what that next chapter was going to look like.
Well, I get asked that a lot as well. And I feel like, and I've had several opportunities since I've been out of full-time coaching to come back into full-time coaching. And I feel like I could do it again tomorrow and be happy as a lamb, because I really loved coaching at the collegiate level and the impact on student athletes and, fighting for that championship, whatever it might be. And I loved everything about being on a college campus and coaching. But I always, I feel like there's just maybe want to do something more, something bigger. And so when the opportunity presented itself, even though I have to be honest with you, I really didn't know what I was doing in terms of managing a large nonprofit organization. I kind of fell back and dusted off that business degree that I had many, many years ago. And, as I mentioned to you earlier, I always be a coach at heart. I think like a coach. It's fun to coach on air with the TV broadcasts and that sort of thing. But I really feel like my world has expanded a lot, kind of here later in my career. And I've met so many more people from all walks of life, be it all the organizations surrounding our sport, USA Softball, USSSA, Triple Crown, PGF, all of these organizations with softball. I have met so many business people surrounding the sport, which helps drive our sport as well. So we have a lot of people that have partnered with us as sponsors, but even outside of those sponsorships, just meeting all the people in the business space and even technology space for our sport. And then just the challenges, as you know, of running major events, be it our convention where we have, 1,700 people and sold out exhibit show, and just managing that from start to finish, and working with hotels and events. And so I feel like my skill sets have been challenged and expanded. And, that's been a lot of fun at this point in time in my career. But I really feel like that coaching background and the connection to the coaches and having been in the trenches certainly has helped in this role. Not only just being able to pick up the phone and talk to a lot of coaches or have them come share at our events and in our education and that sort of thing, but being able to think about how does a coach want to learn? What do they want to learn? How do they want it delivered? What would that look like? And so I think the transition has been, it's been very interesting. you get used to a certain cycle of life when you've had a job as long as I've had. So when you've had a job for 25 years, you get used to that cycle. Okay, well, now we're in season, and then we're in camp season, and then we have fall season, and we have recruiting, and we have some time off. Like, you get used to that cycle, and all of a sudden the cycle is different. That's for sure. Our busiest time at the NFCA is probably December, January, February. So right over the holidays. Just everything's just a little different, but at the same time, I really enjoyed the new relationships. I've enjoyed the new challenges. I can promise you, I've never been as busy as I have been. And I know everybody's busy in this, and 2020 is just kind of a word everybody probably overuses, but I do feel like we do, and part of it's self-inflicted because we do so much at the NFCA, and I enjoy doing some things, on the side, like this trip to Italy coming up, and the TV broadcasting, and so some of it's self-inflicted, but at the same time, I don't ever want to sit back someday and say I didn't do enough, or I didn't try that, or I didn't try this. And so fortunately, I have a staff that is pushing me every step of the way, and they're able to keep up and keep things at a high level as well.
Well, and staff sometimes don't get enough credit for supporting us in our roles and really doing the work behind the scenes. And I know some of the ones on your staff, and I think you just have awesome people surrounding you.
They are fantastic. We could not do what we do. And it's been so much fun to watch them grow, because the majority of them were either with the association when we had this change, or came on board very quickly after. And so now we've had some continuity in staff the last few years. And as you and I both know, that makes a huge difference in what you're doing and how you can grow, and your understanding of the depths of the projects and initiatives you're doing. And it's been really fun for me to watch their personal and professional growth as well. And a lot of them have changed their titles and their roles, and have expanded roles because of that. They've earned every bit of it. And so I think that's a big reason too why we are able to, think of the association as a bike tire, and we had a few spokes, and now we have a ton of spokes. It's a lot of those initiatives have come directly from them, and I've said, go for it. Let's see if we can make this work, and then off they go. So it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. One of the things I always get asked is about leadership and morning routines, and that's such a buzz thing right now. So I'm going to ask you, do you have a morning routine?
I think it'd be fun to ask my staff that question. So the first year I was in this executive director role, as I mentioned, really did not know a lot about the ins and outs behind the scenes of the association. Had a lot to do. I was, and it was before I learned when you can schedule a send time for your email. Did you know you could do that? You can do that.
I only realized that a little while ago. Yes.
Yeah, it is like the greatest feature ever, because a lot of times, especially that first year, I mean, I just struggled to sleep, and just had a lot on my mind trying to figure out how we're going to keep this thing moving and what we're going to do. And so I would send, anyone and everyone emails from, like 4 to 6 in the morning, not intentionally, but I had to get some things done, and it was on my mind. And, now that schedule send is magic. But my morning routine now, I will say, in the last year, where I feel like I've actually been able to catch my breath a little bit. It took about 3 years though. So in the last year is, I definitely am an early riser. I probably get up between 5 and 5:30 every day, pretty easily. I'm just lucky. I don't feel like I need a ton of sleep. So, but I can get up between 5 and 5:30 pretty easily. Check a few things while I'm having some coffee in the morning, like, whether it's just quick emails, if there's anything urgent, or, bank accounts of the association, or, whatever my calendar for the day, certainly. And then get a workout in, somewhere between usually, 30 minutes to 45 minutes, try to get a workout in, and then, take a shower and head in, depending on where I am. I'm probably on the road, not half the time, but a lot of the time, depending on the time of year. So if I'm on the road, then whatever that event or whatever that engagement may be. And if I'm in Louisville at our headquarters, then head into the office. our office hours are traditional 9 to 5 Eastern time, but our staff has very much flex hours. We have some staff who have children, so they have a different type of schedule. We have some who start a little bit later or end a little earlier, but for the most part, we're all in the office, around the majority of the day. And I'm much better, as I tell people all the time, I'd rather make a decision at 5 in the morning than at 10 o'clock at night. I think I think a little better. Think a little better in the morning. If I have to make a decision at 10 at night, I will, but usually to bed somewhere between 10 and 10:30, sometimes 11, but mornings are my favorite time. I just, and if I can get outside in the morning for that cup of coffee and, kind of look over the calendar or read a devotion or whatever it is I'm doing, it just starts my day off right.
Outside with a cup of coffee, that's what lake life is for, right?
That you got it. I think that's where we learned it, Megan. Just, there's nothing like going outside, watching that sun come up over the lake, and it's just so peaceful. And, just helps you reset and think. I just noticed if I am running late, which is very, very rare, but if I am, it just doesn't set the tone well. I'd rather have that extra time in the morning than not.
Well, speaking of the cycle of life and the pace we've alluded to, and you self-inflicted some of it. So outside of lake time, and maybe that's, a key thing for you, but what do you do to reset? How do you manage the work life? I'm going to call it harmony because I'm not so sure it's balance.
I like that word, harmony. I like that a lot. I'm going to use that. I like that. Well, it definitely just being able to sweat and, have that time where, I like to get a good workout in of some sort. I like to do a variety of workouts. Biking outside is probably my favorite, but I do a little bit of anything because I need that variety. I'm not just somebody who can go out and run, pound the pavement every day. I need a little more zip in my workouts, but working out, being able to sweat and have that time definitely helps reset, rebalance. Visiting and spending time with friends also helps revisit, and mainly because I feel like the more people you can talk to, the more you can just laugh and learn from and enjoy that engagement. People of all walks of life. And also I'm a big reader. I do love to read. I feel like it was really a big reader my entire life. And then there was about a 2 or 3 year span there when I was first in this role where unfortunately that got pushed to the wayside just to keep up with everything else and learn about everything else we're doing. But now I'm back into that rhythm and I really do love it. I think that's a big one for me too.
All right. So we're wrapping up here. We end every episode with rapid fire questions. So I get to put you on the hot seat here.
I'm ready.
Well, I don't know. This one might be kind of easy because it might allude to where you're going tomorrow, but name something on your bucket list.
Something on my bucket list. I would have to say, I've done a sprint level triathlon. I've done a couple of them, but I'd like to kick it up and do a little longer triathlon. It's on my bucket list.
Wow, that's awesome. What's the app on your phone you couldn't live without?
Oh gosh, can I look at it right now to see?
Yeah,
I really do like USA Today. But I also love my Fitbit app. I wear a Fitbit watch and I like to keep up with that and what's going on with that. Cool.
What's something that most people don't know about you?
I'm also very musically inclined. I love to play the piano. I took music lessons. My whole family's very musically inclined. I like to sing. Now I just try to sing in the shower. But I used to sing a little more competitively, but I do love playing the piano.
Okay, I'm so impressed. I did not know you were musically inclined because funny enough, my next question for you was, what's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, that's a good one. Probably the Spice Girls. If You Want to Be, that one. I think that's the name of it. Probably that one.
Yeah, I love it. All right, I'm holding you to it sometime when we're at convention, like next year in Dallas or something.
Sounds good.
Last question, what keeps you awake at night?
I would say if anything keeps me awake at night, it's work related. Just making sure that our staff has everything they need to keep moving forward and that we're doing everything we can do to help our coaches moving forward. So I'd say, different work projects can keep me awake at night.
Not surprised to hear that.
I know, I'm working on that.
Carol, I can't thank you enough for I know, right? I think we all are. It's like the never ending progress. So, but I can't thank you enough for being here. I know you're smack in the middle of your education, your busiest months. You made time for us this morning, and overall what you've done for our organization, your continued support.
Thank you, and really all the people involved in WeCOACH, and all the advocacy you're doing and all the wonderful things you're doing for our coaches out there.
Well, and best of luck this spring as you head into your season.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Subscribe to With Sports in your podcast app to catch each new episode dropping every other Thursday. Applications for our summer 2020 NCAA Women Coach Academy and NCAA Academy 2.0 programs are available at WeCoachSports.org. The deadline to apply is February 7th. For more information on all things With Sports or WeCOACH, check out our social media pages at WeCOACH or at With Sports on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And until next time, all sports, one voice, WeCOACH.